So, Bhakti Yoga is a very short and sweet chapter, but it is one of the most important chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. So, we will begin the 12th chapter, Bhakti Yoga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatho Jayamudirayed Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pankhum Langhayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Mande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramanandamadhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Bhakti Yoga, the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. At the end of the 11th chapter, we saw how Krishna explaining his universal form, the Vishwarupa, to Arjuna, which was actually an inestimable, you cannot estimate how that is. However, that is not a form that you can personally relate to. So, in the beginning of chapter 12, Arjuna speaks to Krishna that he wants to hear about bhakti, bhakti seva, devotional service, and what is the position, etc., etc. And that is how the chapter begins, with Arjuna's question, and then Krishna explaining how bhakti is superior. So in the first 7 verses of the chapter, Bhakti Yoga has a total of just 20 shlokas. And in the first 7 shlokas, Krishna answering Arjuna's question is actually establishing that bhakti is superior to impersonalism. And from 8th to 12th shlokas, Krishna talks to Arjuna about the progressive stages of bhakti, how at various levels one can serve Krishna. And then from the 13th to the 20th shloka of this chapter describes the qualities of a bhakta that makes that bhakta very dear to Krishna. So this is how this chapter is laid. So we saw already that the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita is having the most important thing of the Bhagavad Gita, the most important message of Krishna, which is in Bhagavad Gita, that is there in the middle 6 chapters. And we know that before the 7th chapter, that is the middle portion of Bhagavad Gita, starts from 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6 chapters. So in the 6th chapter, Dhyana Yoga, if you remember, Krishna already gave an indication about the Bhakti Yogi. In the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna spoke about Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Correct? That is, of all the yogis, one who is with great faith abiding in me and thinking of Krishna within himself, madgatena antaratmana, such a person is the best yogi. Krishna says like that. That is my same yukta tamo mataha, my mata. My opinion is that such a yogi is the best yogi, Krishna says. So now, when we are reaching the 12th chapter, which is now the concluding portion of the middle part of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is again, through his question, making Krishna discuss bhakti. Also because the 11th chapter is so much full of Krishna's Vishwarupa Darshanam and all that impersonal aspect of that Rupa. So, and that is, as we discussed, that is one Rupam of Krishna that will fill us with awe and reverence more than anything else. So, Arjuna want to change that. and get back to what is the crux of the subject matter. Okay, so beginning of the chapter, Arjuna is asking Krishna, is asking which is more perfect, those who are engaged in your devotional service or those who worship the impersonal Brahman or your unmanifested form. So from the question, we already understand that there are two ways of approaching, and one is directly engaging ourselves in the devotional service or bhakti seva of Krishna, or worshipping the impersonal avyakta Brahman. The Brahman that is, it is everywhere, all pervading Brahman. So two ways to approach, and even in that, the impersonalist, transcendentalist can be personalist and impersonalist. Okay, meaning this Atmiyavadi, what we call, anybody who is on the path of, let us say, transcendental realization, in a transcendental journey. When you are traveling, there are two types of people. One type are the personalists and the other type are the impersonalists. So in the impersonalists, there are two ways of looking at that, looking at the supreme absolute truth. One way is to worship the Lord in his Vishwarupam, that all pervading universal form. Or the other way is to think of the Lord's unmanifested, subtle, cannot be described, that kind of a form. Basically, no form. Okay. So Krishna now has to reply to Arjuna, because Arjuna is asking, is the one who is engaged in bhakti for you. For you means what? There is a personal relationship, right? The moment you say, I am doing some bhakti for Krishna, I am engaged in devotional service for Krishna, that automatically establishes a personal relationship. But when you speak about Brahman, which has no personality, that means there is no personal interaction. Okay. So very clearly, Arjuna wants to know the personalist and the impersonalist, which is the easier process, who is the better of the two. And Krishna replies very clearly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. So Krishna's answer is very clear. Devotees engaged in his service are better. No two thoughts about it. Those who fix their minds on my personal form and always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. So devotee engaged in service for Krishna is any day better. And the Acharyas are explaining, Srila Prabhupada explains that sometimes the devotee will be chanting Krishna's holy names. Sometimes he may be reading Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's instructions. Sometimes he may be reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, the history of Krishna. Or sometimes he may be cooking some Bhog Nivedya for Krishna. Sometimes he is in the market buying something for Krishna. So, in so many different ways, the devotee is engaged in serving Krishna, including washing the dishes in the temple kitchen is a service to Krishna. Including sweeping the temple floor is actually a service to Krishna. And each of those actions, if it is done in the proper mood, each of those actions is samadhi only actually. Samadhi means what? You have no other thought except Krishna. So, while sweeping the temple of the Lord, a devotee is singing Krishna's names, he is in samadhi only. You don't have to be sitting on Padmasan with the Shanti Mudra on your hand and your eyes half closed, only then you are in samadhi, not like that. Samadhi means you have no other thought other than Krishna. So that samadhi can be attained when you are chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. if the only thought is Krishna at that time of chanting, then you are in samadhi. So, Arjuna is now very happy that Krishna has established that bhakti, seva is superior. So, but also Arjuna is wondering then what about the impersonalist? He is also trying in his own way and he is renouncing work like that and he is worshipping the unmanifested. So, Krishna will answer that question in the third and fourth shloka of the chapter. Those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, that is the impersonal conception of the absolute truth. And they are worshipping how? By controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone. Such persons, engaged in welfare of all, at last they achieve me. Prapnuvanti mameva, that is for sure. In the end, they will achieve. But how they will achieve? They will achieve the Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti is the impersonal feature of the Lord, which is actually nothing but the Jyoti, or that light that is emanating, that bright light that is emanating from the Lord's body. That is what is actually illuminating the entire spiritual worlds. And the Lord is so bright to look at that in Ishopanishad it says that because of the effulgence of the Lord, it is actually not possible to see Him. He's so effulgent. So it's actually that effulgence which is the Brahma Jyoti. But what happens is that if you enter that Brahma Jyoti, then it is formless. There are no attributes in there. So the tendency is that again one will fall down from the Brahma Jyoti down to the material platform. But okay, if somebody is an impersonalist and a worshipper of Brahma Jyoti, but in case he comes across an exalted Vaishnava, then they may accept the personalist way of worshipping Krishna and achieve Krishna's service. But then Krishna also now tells what is the nature of this impersonal worship. In the fifth shloka, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, Klesho adhikadaras tesham avyaktasakta chetasam avyaktahi gatir dukkham dehavadbhir avapyate. So, how it is klesho adhika? Klesha means difficulty. Adhika means more. It is more difficult. For who? Avyakta asakta chetasa. If your chetana is actually asakta, attracted to the avyakta, if you are attached to the avyakta form of the Supreme Absolute Truth, then klesho adhika. It is very, very difficult. Avyakta hi gatir dukkham. So, it gives dukkham. It is very difficult. Dehavadbhir avapyate. Especially for those who are embodied. That means those who are sitting in a material body, to actually get that impersonal Brahman realization also is very, very difficult. That path is very difficult. And why is Krishna saying that? We can just take our own example. That is, if there is an object of our attraction, of our attention, it is easy to fix our attention on a given object. Whether you take it on a material platform or on a spiritual platform, I am just talking about an object that captures our attention. Okay? And if that object is attractive enough, it captures our attention, right? That is why everything that is beautiful in this world immediately catches our eye, for example. Why is that? Because it has an attractive feature. So it is easier to take notice, and if it is absolutely beautiful, you will notice it for some time. Correct? So, anything that is, has a form, it is easy for us to become attracted to that. Okay? But just imagine if somebody says that you fix your mind on a plain wall or on nothing, and just try doing that, and we will find that it is very, very difficult. It is practically very, very difficult. The main reason is that our mind, our consciousness, through the medium of our senses, is already having so many objects of attraction already. You see? So to become attached or to become, to concentrate yourself on nothingness is extremely difficult. That is what Krishna is telling here. Okay? And then Krishna goes on to explain how easy it is to attain the desired goal by practicing true bhakti. So Krishna says in the shloka 6 and 7, Krishna says that those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. You see? So, several points Krishna is making in this particular two shlokas. Those who worship Krishna, giving up all their activities to Krishna, being devoted to Krishna without deviation, engaged in devotional service, always meditating on Krishna, fixing mind on Krishna. So, if we are able to do these things, whatever we spoke just now, then Krishna says, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. And this delivery from the ocean of birth and death is very, very important. We must understand that Krishna is the only one who can actually deliver us from this ocean of birth and death. Srila Prabhupada always used to say that we cannot, we have not, and we will not solve this problem of birth, death, old age and disease. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Science will keep on finding or trying to find solution, and you will never find a complete solution. That is, to stop birth altogether, to stop death altogether, to stop Jara, old age altogether, or to stop disease altogether. Correct? So these four problems are actually the problems that we face in this material body. And the only person who can give a solution to this is Krishna. In so many cases we saw previously also we discussed how when Gajendra picked up that one lotus flower and called the Supreme Lord, it is said that the Supreme Lord left Vaikunta in such a hurry that he did not even put his Angavastra. The Supreme Lord, when he goes anywhere, he is very properly dressed. You will never find, him in a casual attire at all. Very beautifully dressed he will be. Even as a cowherd boy, he was always very beautifully dressed. Impeccably beautiful he will always be. But when Gajendra called, he did not even wait to put on his Angavastra, it seems. He simply manifested Garuda there, jumped on top of Garuda, and within no time, he landed in front of Gajendra. You see? So this is how the Lord will reciprocate and deliver us from this ocean of birth and death. And that is the hope of the devotee. So from a devotee's side, from a bhakta's side, the responsibility is to cultivate this bhakti and to become more and more eager to serve Krishna. And if we have these two things, then Krishna takes that responsibility to rescue us from Maya, rescue us from this, Janana Marana Chakra into which we are, it is like a vicious cycle. It just keeps going on and on and on, and actually we don't find any solution for this. So, Krishna says that if somebody is becoming my devotee, if somebody is dedicating himself to me, if somebody is keeping me in his mind, ananya chetaha satatam nitya yukta upasate, so many places Krishna keeps on repeating. So, if we do that, then Krishna will deliver the devotee from this Janana Marana Chakra. And then in the next 4 verses, Krishna will describe the levels of achievement of bhakti. In the 8th sloka, this is a very famous sloka. Mayeva mana adhatsva mayi buddhim niveshaya nivashishyasi mayeva ata urdhvam na samshayah. Mayeva mana adhatsva mayi buddhim niveshaya. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Nivashishyasi mayeva. Then you will live in me always without a doubt. Ata urdhvam na samshaya. There is no doubt about it that you will live in me. If you do what? Fix your mind upon me and engage your intelligence in me. So, a jnani, he is trying to fix the mind on avyakta. But Krishna is now giving instruction to the bhakta, fix your mind on me. Me means me, Krishna. Fix your mind on me. And then he says, Mai, upon me. 3 times in this shloka, Krishna repeats, Mai. Mai eva mana adatsva. Mai buddhim niveshaya. Nivashishyasi mai eva. Why? Upon me, upon me, upon me. And this is Krishna in person standing in front of Arjuna and giving the instruction. That means this Krishna who I am standing in front of you, in me you fix your mind. In me you fix your intelligence. Then in me you will live. You see? So, this is the most advanced stage. To always think of Krishna in attachment and in affection. You see? So then, immediately we will wonder, this is not for me. I am working, I am in this country, I am in this situation. What about me? What should I follow if I am unable to always remember Krishna? Then Krishna explains in the next shloka the next level. Athachittam samadhatum nashakshnosi mayi stiram abhyasa yogena tato mamichhaptum dhananjaya. O Dhananjaya, Krishna is calling Arjuna. If you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, Abhyasa Yogena Tato. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So this is the next stage. Calling Arjuna Dhananjaya, winner of wealth. Because Arjuna was actually the one who will go everywhere and collect wealth for Yudhishthira. So now Krishna is telling Arjuna, fight your mind and obtain the wealth of meditation upon me. You see, Dhananjaya, now you should do that. Because your mind is not allowing you to always fix itself on me. So you fight with your mind. And what you will get when you fight with your mind? You will get a wealth of fixing the mind on Krishna. So, Abhyasa Yoga is already discussed, Abhyasa Yogena Tato, this is already discussed even in the 6th chapter. So, that is practicing of thinking of Krishna. So, it doesn't come automatically. So, one has to practice, and what does Krishna say? Develop a desire to attain me. So, it's very important. Also, from this shloka, we are getting the indication that we may not or we do not have that desire right away. You see, so we have to develop that desire. So cultivate it. You see, many things in this world we say is a cultivated taste, no? Correct? Initially it is not very good, but then we, cultivate a taste for it because everybody tells you it is very, like that. So cultivate this. So to practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, you have to practice it under the guidance of a guru, following the principles, of the Yama Niyama, following the 4 basic regulative principles of Bhakti. Correct? The 4 regulative principles of no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling, and no illicit sex. So we need to follow at least these 4 basic regulative principles. Srila Prabhupada used to say that these are 4 basic principles that will at least bring us up to the human level. Giving up meat eating, giving up intoxication, giving up gambling, and giving up illicit relation with the opposite sex. Okay. And then along with these niyamas, we should follow the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and offer bhoga to Krishna. So like this, and accept that prasadam. So these things when we follow, this is what is practicing Bhakti Yoga in a nutshell, And all these things are for what? There is one very fundamental regulative principle underlying all these regulative principles. That is spoken in the Padma Purana. This very famous shloka in Padma Purana which says, Smartavya satatam Vishnoho Vismartavyo na jatuchit Sarve vidhi nishedha Sur etayor eva kinkaraha. That is, you should always remember Vishnu or Krishna and never forget him at any time. And all the rules and all the prohibitions that we follow are the servants of these 2 principles. And what is the 2 principle? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So this is the level we need to get to. So what should I do if I am unable to, even after practicing, if I am unable to always think of Krishna, then what should I do? So in the 10th sloka of the chapter, Krishna answers that, Abhyasepya samarthosi mat karma paramo bhava madarthamapi karmani kurvan siddhimavapsyasi. So Krishna says, if you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So, the first 2 stages are dealing primarily with engaging the mind. Mind is actually the chief of all the senses, right? Now, if you are not able to do that with the mind, then Krishna speaks now about work, which is through the external senses, hands and legs and, those senses. The working senses as we call them. We will look at all those things in the 13th chapter, so I am not getting so much into that. So, if we are unable to think of Krishna, then we can make progress by working for him, which is called the Nishkama Karma Yoga. You see? By engaging in our karma, by engaging in our nirvishta karma, and not expecting any result, and simply submitting that to Krishna as an offering. You see? And using our wealth, using our artha to serve Krishna in various different ways. That is why we also have many philanthropically minded people. They may not be able to follow all these Bhakti Yoga regulation, and also they will donate money to build temple. They will donate money for Goraksha. They will donate money for Annadanam, like that. So gradually, those type of people are also able to come into bhakti. But these stages we must understand are all pre-bhakti stages. And what can we do if we are unable to act on any of these above stages? You cannot think constantly of Krishna. you cannot follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga, you cannot work for Krishna. Then Krishna says, if however you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act, giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. So, none of these things can be done, then you act, and that is the result, you mentally renounce it to me. Because of so many reasons, you may not be able to do all these things. You may not be able to directly support, building a temple. You may not be able to directly support, feeding the cows or feeding the Vaishnavas or feeding the poor or anything like that. So at least, just consider that I am submitting all results to Krishna. Because slowly this will purify the mind and the other stages can be attained. So, we must understand that in Shloka 8, 9 and 10, the spiritual result of each recommended practice they are described. Thinking of Krishna means we will live with Krishna. Following regulative principles of Bhakti, we will develop desire to attain Krishna. By working for Krishna, we will come to the perfect stage. But in the 11th shloka, whatever Krishna says, he doesn't directly speak about any result. Why? Because it is not yet reached a stage where it can give you any tangible result. Okay? So, we must understand what is the perfectional stage, and we must be also able to understand where our stage is. By going through these shlokas, each one of us, while we study the Bhagavad Gita, we can very easily judge where I am now. These are all the great benefits of studying the Bhagavad Gita. Now you know what Krishna wants from the living entity. And also the various levels, gradations we know. So by going through these, we are able to understand where I am, and we don't have to share it with anybody. We can see, study and understand for ourselves where we are, and then we can work out how we need to progress. Then Krishna further says, if you cannot take to this practice, engage yourself in cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge is meditation. Better than meditation is renunciation of fruits of action. Because by such renunciation, you will attain peace of mind. So, again, he is saying that if you cannot do this Nishkama Karma Yoga, at least then you try and develop Brahmagyan. And meditation means yogic meditation, by which you will understand Paramatma. So, we now understand what is perfected devotional service, which is always remembering Krishna. Then Bhakti Yoga regulations by sadhana bhakti, working for Krishna. Okay, and then Nishkama Karma Yoga. And if that also is not possible, then you can go through the yogic process or attaining Brahmagyan. So these are different grades, relative grades of spiritual process and spiritual progress. So either you can do this through the gradual development, or you can do the direct process of directly engaging in devotional service to Krishna. And it is better that we take up the direct method, surrender to Krishna and start working. Because if we try and go through the gradual process, the problem is that we don't have enough time, one thing. Two, we get too distracted by so many things on the way. Even when we are directly trying to serve, do devotional service, bhakti seva for Krishna, there are still so many distractions. But when we are not directly linked to Krishna, the distractions are that much more. That is why it is said, the acharyas are saying that it is better that you jump in directly, and then you will learn to swim with the tide of Maya. And eventually we will swim and come out of it. That is the greatest advantage of entering directly into Bhakti Yoga. And then from the 13th to the 20th shloka, as we discusses about those qualities of devotees that make a bhakta very dear to Krishna. Adveshta sarva bhutanam starts with that. One who is not envious, he is a friend of all, who does not think himself a proprietor, who is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, who is satisfied, who is self-controlled, engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. You see, we understand when we actually try to practice bhakti, we will automatically become friendly to everyone. And even when somebody is not friendly to us, we will understand that something we have done to him so bad in the past that now, when I say past, not this immediate past, could be in the past so many janmas we might have done some harm to that person. So in this janma, he is acting like an enemy to me. That's all. You see, all these realizations will come when we are practicing bhakti, and one by one these gunas will start appearing in us. You know, Krishna continues, he for whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety is very dear to me. My devotee who is not dependent on ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains and not striving for some result, is dear to me. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, neither laments nor desires, renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me. This renouncing auspicious and inauspicious things. We are ever ready to renounce inauspicious things. But Krishna says you should renounce the auspicious things also. Because whatever we consider auspicious in the material world, that auspiciousness lasts only for some time. After that, it just, no more, nothing auspicious about it. We will know each event in our life. We thought this is a very auspicious day, very auspicious event, nothing. So, renouncing both auspicious, inauspicious things, this all happens, these all become prakat, these all start appearing, manifesting in us when we practice devotion. Krishna says, one who is equal to friends and enemies, equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything. Another great quality. Silent means not that you remain quiet. Silent means you stop speaking nonsense, that is silence, and start speaking sense. And when you start speaking sense, you have only very little to speak. You see, too much speaking means too much more nonsense will be there. Right? Just consider the amount of time we spend on speaking loka katha, grama katha, or prajalpa, means unwanted talk. You will know that most of it is nonsense. Sense is there only for very little, and that is what is important. So silent actually means that not that I am on Mauna Vrata. Nowadays Mauna Vrata become very easy. I know one friend of mine who does Mauna Vrata on all Sundays, because he is not working, and he goes on a Mauna Vrata. And morning itself he will send message on WhatsApp, today I am on Mauna Vrata. So only contact me on WhatsApp. So basically his mouth is shut, but he is very active. That day he will be more active on WhatsApp and Facebook and other things. But only thing he won't speak. But you actually see, speak means what? Communicating your thoughts with others. Speech is just one medium of that. You can do it by writing also. What's the big difference? So like that, silence means speaking sense. Sense means speaking about Krishna, basically. Okay? And Krishna says, satisfied with anything. That means you become content. Why? Because you understand that this is what is destined for me. That is what will bring contentment. And when do you understand that? When you understand that relationship with Krishna and understand that Krishna is my only friend, my ever friend, Bhoktaram, Yajnatapasam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Suhurdam, Sarvabhutanam, Nyatva Mam, Shanti Mrichati. You become peaceful, Krishna says in the last verse of the 5th chapter. So I understand Krishna is my only friend. And whatever he does for me, it is because he is my best friend. So I accept, so I am content. You see? Whether I get this much or whether I get this much, I am content. This is another quality of devotee. So Krishna says, these things make you dear to me. So such persons are very, very dear to Krishna. And while discussing all these qualities, you may have seen that even in our limited discussion of this Bhagavad Gita, we will know that we are discussed so many times these qualities, these qualities that we talk about right now. You may be thinking that it has been repeated so many times. Absolutely correct. It is repeated only. Why? Is it because Krishna has nothing to say? Just to emphasize the fact that a devotee must acquire all these qualifications. Without good qualifications, one cannot be a pure devotee. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna. That is, whatever mahadguna you may have is of no use if you don't have Hari Bhakti. So Hari Bhakti is actually the topmost guna in a person. If he doesn't have that one guna, whatever other you may say that he is so much charity, is this, that and the other thing. If he has no Hari Bhakti, all those things are useless. This is the verdict of Narada Muni, who is the topmost bhakta. It is not my verdict, not your verdict. Narada Muni says this. Yasyastya bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarver gunais-tatra samasate sura. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathe nasati dhavato bahi. This is the full shloka. So, when you have akinchana bhakti for Bhagavan, you will get all these wonderful qualities. And without that bhakti, any other quality you have no use. Why? Because all those will perish along with this body. But Hari Bhakti is something that is attached to the soul per se. So, that is one thing that remains with the Atma. So, that becomes prakata, that becomes manifest through all these wonderful qualities. Okay? So, Krishna is closing the chapter by saying that those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. So, this path of Bhakti Yoga is imperishable. It will never get destroyed. And if you are engaging yourself with complete faith, making Krishna as the topmost goal, then we become very dear to Krishna. So, we must understand that Krishna is satisfied only with bhakti, not with any other quality. Okay? We may have so many other wonderful qualities, but Krishna is not looking for any of those qualities. Simply, he is looking for bhakti. That's it. And this is now become very clear. Arjuna is asking who is better, engaged in the path of impersonal Brahman or one who is engaged in personal service. Very clearly answered that if you are engaged in personal service to Krishna, that is the better path. So this is what we understand. And what is this bhakti that we speak about so much? What is this bhakti? Very briefly, let us think for a moment about what is this bhakti. Is it asking Krishna solutions to our problem? Or is it saying just prayers as a duty, you know. So, Narada Muni, in Narada Bhakti Sutra, he gives this information about bhakti. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. Narada Muni says this is called bhakti. What is called bhakti? Hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam. Hrishika means indriyas, senses. Hrishika Isha means the controller of the senses or the Ishvara of the indriyas, who is none other than Krishna. So using all our indriyas to serve Krishna, that is bhakti. And what is the nature of it? Sarva upadi vinirmuktam. It is free from all conditions, means unconditional. Tat para. It is above this material existence. Nirmalam, it is pure. So that which is pure, that which is unconditional, above this material platform, serving Krishna with all our senses, that is bhakti. And Narada Muni also says that result of bhakti is more bhakti. Bhakti is the process and the result, that is the greatness of bhakti. And however much bhakti increases, there is still room for bhakti to increase. It is like ever increasing. You see, it is ever increasing. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Anandambudi Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So from Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, the Anandam that you are getting, the Ambudi, means the ocean of the Ananda, is ever increasing. Very interesting point Mahaprabhu is making there, because the ocean, as you know, that will never raise or lower its level. We all know that. That is why the ocean is called, is always calm, you know. You will never see that it is flowing, overflowing like a river. But here Mahaprabhu says that actually it is by Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, this ocean increases. Ocean of Ananda is ever increasing because of Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So, by performing Bhakti Seva for Krishna, actually our transcendental Ananda, happiness, is always increasing. Through that, Krishna becomes happy and we become happy. Yasmin tushte jagat tushtam, Krishna says that when Krishna becomes happy, the entire Jagat becomes happy. That is why we are always trying to do things for the pleasure of Krishna. That is bhakti, basically. And why do we do that? Because we love Krishna. Why do we love Krishna? Because Krishna is our only well-wisher. So even when I am loving Krishna, there is some swartha in that, you know. There is some swartha in even loving Krishna. Why? Because actually he is my only well-wisher. All the other so-called well-wishers cannot be trusted over a period of time. You see? So this is Bhakti Yoga, and this imperishable path, whoever is following, they can always be sure that Krishna is very, very pleased with them. So this is how the 12th chapter Bhakti Yoga gets concluded. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.